Minutes before Donald Trump announced the delay to attacks on Iranian power infrastructure on March 23rd, someone placed a massive bet on oil prices falling. Minutes before he announced the ceasefire on April 7th, same thing. Minutes before the Strait of Hormuz reopening talks on April 17th, same pattern. Minutes before he extended the ceasefire on April 21st, again. 4 separate occasions, 4 massive bets placed minutes before 4 major announcements, all perfectly timed, all betting on price falls that materialized the moment Trump spoke. The total value of those bets, according to Reuters, is $7 billion. $7 billion. Placed by someone who appeared to know what Trump was about to say before he said it. The CFTC is investigating. The DOJ is investigating. The White House did not respond to requests for comment, and the person who placed those bets, according to Reuters, has not been identified. I want you to hold that in your head for the entire duration of this episode. Someone knew. Before the bombs, before the announcements, before the markets moved, someone knew. And they made $7 billion from it. This is the Hormuz files. Day 71. And today, everything gets darker. Let me now tell you about the confidential CIA analysis that was delivered to policymakers this week, because it directly contradicts almost everything Donald Trump has been saying in public about this war. John Hudson at the Washington Post got this story, and it is devastating in its precision. A confidential new CIA analysis delivered to policymakers this week concludes that Iran can survive the US naval blockade for at least 3 to 4 months before facing more severe economic hardship, a finding that contradicts those hailing an imminent collapse. 3 to 4 months. Iran's economy does not collapse in 3 to 4 months. It stabilizes. It adapts. It finds alternative routes through the Caspian Sea, through back channels, through countries like India that have been quietly cooperating with Tehran throughout this war. And the CIA goes further. US intelligence indicates that Iran retains approximately 75% of its pre-war inventories of mobile missile launchers, and around 70% of its pre-war stockpiles of missiles. That is, after 71 days of the most intense bombing campaign since World War II. 70% of the missiles, 75% of the launchers. Now compare that to what Trump said this week. Their economy is crashing, their currency is worthless, their missiles are mostly decimated. Mostly decimated. The CIA says 70% intact. Trump says mostly decimated. One of those statements is true, and the other one is being told to 330 million Americans every time the president speaks to the press. But here is the detail from the CIA analysis that I think is the most important of all. And I want to read this carefully because every word matters. One of the US officials said they thought Iran's capacity to sustain prolonged economic hardship is far greater than even the current CIA estimate. The leadership has gotten more radical, determined, and increasingly confident they can outlast US political will and sustain domestic repression to check any resistance inside Iran. More radical, more determined, more confident. That is what 71 days of bombing has done to the Iranian leadership. Not broken it, hardened it. Professor Mearsheimer called this war irrational from day one. Professor Jiang predicted America would underestimate Iran in 2024. Scott Ritter said on day 3 that the regime change operation had failed. The CIA, this week, is essentially telling policymakers the same thing in a classified document. And the president is telling the American public the opposite. Now let me come back to the Reuters story, because I want to be very precise about this, because the implications are extraordinary, and I do not want to overstate what we know. A series of well-timed market bets on falling oil prices, totaling as much as $7 billion during March and April, spread across multiple exchanges and types of fuel and derivatives, just before major Iranian policy announcements by US President Donald Trump, according to traders, market experts, and Reuters analysis of exchange data. The pattern is specific and documented. Traders first spotted unusual trades on March 23rd, executed minutes before Trump announced a delay to threatened attacks on Iranian power infrastructure, triggering an oil price fall. The same pattern repeated on April 7th, before Trump announced a ceasefire, triggering a fall of as much as 15% in Brent futures. It happened again on April 17th, when Iranian officials and Trump spoke about reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And then again on April 21st, when Trump extended the ceasefire. 4 times, minutes before the announcement. Every single time. Now, I am not going to tell you who placed these bets, because Reuters could not establish that. And I am not going to accuse anyone without evidence. But I am going to tell you what the pattern means if taken at face value. Either someone got extraordinarily lucky 4 separate times, each time predicting an imminent presidential announcement by betting millions of dollars minutes before it happened. Or someone with access to non-public information about what Trump was about to say, used that information to trade in the oil markets. The CFTC is investigating. The DOJ is investigating. The US administration has already warned staff against using non-public information for financial benefit, which tells you that someone inside the administration believed this was a real risk. $7 billion. Minutes before the announcements. Every time. This is the story that, if it leads where the pattern suggests, would be the biggest financial scandal since the Iraq War insider trading investigations. And virtually nobody is talking about it. Now let me tell you what the President of the United States was doing on Saturday while all of this was happening. Trump had been silent on Truth Social for 7 hours. No posts, no announcements, no Truth Social statements. For a man who typically posts dozens of times a day, 7 hours of silence is notable enough that news organizations began tracking it and asking questions. And then, at 3:51 p.m. on Saturday, May 9th, he came back, with a burst of more than a dozen posts, not about the CIA analysis, not about the $7 billion investigation, not about Iran's response to the peace proposal, which is still pending. Trump posted AI-generated images showing Iranian drones marked with Iranian flags plunging into the sea, captioned, "Drones dropping like butterflies." Moments later, he posted another fabricated visual of a US warship firing laser beams at Iranian UAVs, causing massive explosions, captioned, "Bye-bye drones." And then a final image showing 159 Iranian ships sailing with giant flags on the open sea, followed by those same ships destroyed and sitting at the bottom of the ocean. He also posted himself in a bulletproof vest, watching Iranian ships explode through binoculars. These images are not real. They are AI-generated. No US warship has laser beam weapons deployed in the Strait of Hormuz. 159 Iranian ships have not been sunk. The images are fabricated. And the President of the United States, who is simultaneously supposed to be negotiating a peace deal that could determine the fate of the global economy, posted them as if they were real. The reaction was immediate and divided precisely along the lines you would expect. His supporters celebrated. His critics, and a significant number of Republican strategists, quietly asked the question that Harry Sisson's video has now brought to 450,000 viewers in 11 hours. What is actually going on? The 7-hour silence, the sudden burst, the AI fantasies, the mocking memes during active negotiations. What is going on? And now, the voice that I think everyone watching this channel needs to hear right now more than any other. Professor Jiang, the Yale-educated historian, the man who predicted this war in 2024, when everyone else was looking away. His interview on The Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett has been viewed 4.5 million times in 3 days. Let that land. 4.5 million people in 72 hours. Seeking out the man who was right before, to hear what he thinks happens next. And what he told Bartlett is not comforting. Professor Jiang now believes the conditions for a much larger conflict are forming. He has been warning for weeks that the 3 questions he identified from the beginning — does this remain an air war? Does nuclear become a factor? Does the Al-Aqsa Mosque get drawn in? — are all moving in dangerous directions simultaneously. The Iran war has demonstrably weakened America's conventional military readiness. We showed you the numbers. 50% of THAAD interceptors expended, 50% of Patriots gone, 45% of precision strike missiles used. Professor Pape warned that the depletion of US standoff precision weapons is directly threatening America's ability to defend Taiwan. China, watching every development from Beijing, is doing exactly what Jiang would predict: calculating, measuring, assessing. And the German foreign minister this week called Iran humiliating the United States. Al Jazeera reported that Iran's Lego-style social media videos mocking America's military claims have won the narrative war against Trump across the global south. Iran is not just surviving militarily, it is winning the information war. It is emerging, as Professor Pape said, as a 4th center of global power. And Professor Jiang, 4.5 million views in 3 days, is now saying World War III may be beginning. Not as hyperbole, as analysis. Here is where I land on day 71. The CIA says Iran can hold for 3 to 4 months. Trump says their missiles are mostly decimated. The CIA says 70% of the missiles are intact. $7 billion in insider trading bets were placed minutes before every major Trump announcement on this war. The investigation is active. The president posted AI fantasies of sunk Iranian ships during active peace negotiations after a 7-hour silence that raised questions nobody in mainstream media is willing to ask directly. Iran's response to the US peace proposal is still pending. The IRGC has threatened a heavy assault on US forces. Rubio met Qatar's Prime Minister in Miami on Saturday. Russia offered to host Iran's enriched uranium, and it briefly looked like a deal. Then it fell apart. And Professor Jiang, who has been right about all of it, just told 4.5 million people that World War III may be beginning. I want to say something directly to you, the people who have been watching the Hormuz files since episode 1. We have covered this war honestly. We have told you when the official narrative was false. We have brought you the voices that were right when the institutions were wrong. And right now, today, the gap between the official narrative and the documented reality is wider than it has been at any point in 71 days of this war. The CIA contradicts the president in writing. $7 billion in mysterious bets demands an explanation nobody is providing. A president posts AI victory images during active negotiations. And the man who predicted this war in 2024 is now warning about something larger. The Hormuz files will be here, watching, digging, telling you what the evidence actually shows. Subscribe if you haven't. Share this with someone who thinks they are getting the full story from mainstream media. And tell me in the comments, the $7 billion, the 7-hour silence, the CIA versus Trump. Which of these 3 stories concerns you most? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next file.